Hello and welcome to SweetSpotDFS. This is a review show for the 2021 AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. Usually what I cover in these videos, I like to go over the results and recap, look at the $1 GPP winning lineup versus the optimal lineup, and then I like to cover all of the stats that kind of led into this tournament of all the top 10, top 20 golfers, just to see if we can find some kind of correlation. I will also cover the bucket system, or all of the buckets, and see how well they did, and I'm going to cover what I did right and what I did wrong. So you can find timestamps in the description. Chapter mode's also enabled. If you hover over the progress bar on YouTube, you can see what segment is what. So let's go ahead and get into the results and recap. I do want to first say, hopefully you guys are enjoying Valentine's Day with somebody, and if you aren't, hopefully you did well on DraftKings, and if you didn't, let's try to figure it out. Right away, Daniel Berger, he's your winner, 18 under. Now, the target score that I had predicted was between 15 and 18 under. So right away, we got that one right. And that marks 4 tournaments in a row where we got the target score right. I had heard around the industry, some people thought this was going to be a lower scoring tournament because there was no Pro-Am, that kind of thing. I didn't think that. And if you looked in the strategy video or if you watched it, I basically said, Monterey Peninsula was taking out of the course rotation. That was the easier of the 3 golf courses in rotation. So obviously we only had Pebble Beach and Spyglass Hill. Just because of that, I didn't think the scores were going to be that low. Now we had a really low Thursday, primarily because the weather was perfect. There was very little wind. There was no rain. It was really easy for the guys that are playing in Pebble to go really low. And also for those playing at Spyglass, not to get beat up by it too much. And then Friday, we saw more low scores at Pebble and, a little higher scores at Spyglass Hill, but not by much. But either way, those 2 rounds basically made up of everything you see in the 18 under for Daniel Berger. I mean, I think he shot like an 8 under on his Friday round at Pebble. So just right there, 8 strokes at Pebble. And then the weekend, the wind picked up. The weather got a little bit, I wouldn't say dicier because it still was pretty decent. But either way, target score we got right, primarily because we figured out the conditions prior to, or, we just knew it wasn't going to be as much of a birdie fest. The writing was on the wall. Now, what I had said is that actually opened up the door to golfers like Jordan Spieth and Jason Day to do well at this tournament. Not only is their course history really good, but they almost don't really tend to do that well at birdie fests. When it has to be a grinded out type of golf course or tournament and say the wind is up, for those golfers, it's all about the technique, of playing through the wind, playing the smart shots, that kind of stuff. And this course isn't really, like Pebble Beach isn't a golf course where if you're spraying the ball, you're really going to be penalized. I think one of the things that they mentioned on the broadcast was, wow, I can't believe he's aiming at the cart path. Well, there's no trouble over there, so why not? The rough wasn't that thick, and these golfers knew it. So that's why they did that. And that's why someone like Jordan Spieth and Jason Day can do well at this time in their careers, because obviously they're not doing as well as they once were. It's because this course is playing easier. So for me, seeing Jordan Spieth, Jason Day inside the top 10, no surprise. I said they were going to do well. Berger and Cantlay were my favorite golfers. They were on the thumbnail. Obviously, you see first and third. So we got a ton of those things correct. Now, you couldn't have played all 4 of those golfers together. Their salaries were way too expensive. But for the most part, we predicted those things absolutely perfectly. So that was great. I see Paul Casey up there inside the top 10. I wasn't very huge on Paul Casey. One of my followers, Nick, him and I were talking on Twitter about it, DMing each other. And he said he liked Paul Casey. And I'm like, you know what? I think he can get inside the top 10, no problem. But I don't think he's going to win this tournament. And at his price, if he's not winning the tournament and say one of the other 10K golfers are, I don't want to play him. And I got that part right. So Nick, if you're watching, I try to tell you. But either way, no, 5th place isn't that bad, especially if you have the right other, pieces to put together. Obviously, you could have made it work out. So Let's go ahead, dive into the $1 GPP versus the optimal lineup. I want to make sure this is sorted by finishing position. The $1 GPP winning lineup scored 606.5 points, used up $49,900 on DraftKings. So he left $100 on the table. And it consisted of Daniel Berger, Nate Lashley, Max Homa, Cameron Tringali, Kevin Streelman, and Akshay Bhatia. Bhatia, he was one of my favorite plays heading into this, especially in the 6K range. It's nice to see that the GPP winning lineup was taken down using a 6K golfer, because if we look at everyone inside the top 10, not one 6K golfer was there. And that's a surprise. I thought there was definitely going to be one, so I got that one wrong. I had said you wanted a 10K golfer, a 6K golfer, 3 7K golfers, and whatever, fill in the rest with whatever you have available. And that was kind of right. Now, the $1 GPP winning lineup scored 606.5 points. The optimal lineup scored 667.5. So there was definitely combinations available that could have done better than that. But the optimal used up 48,900. You had to have left 1,100 on the table. That's difficult to do. Sometimes my optimizer does that for me though. And that's awesome because I enjoy putting those into my big GPPs because that really gives me a different lineup than most people. I think it's like 95 to 97% of golfers in draft or, DFS golfers use up nearly all of the salary. I think it's like, between 49.5 and 49.7. Like it's somewhere between 300 and 500 they leave on the table. That's 97% of your golfers on DraftKings. So if you can differentiate it by leaving a little bit more, I think it works out pretty decent. But either way, 1,100 is hard to get to, and you really wouldn't have had to. Now, the optimal lineup consisted of Daniel Berger, Maverick McNeely, Jordan Spieth, Nate Lashley, Charlie Hoffman, and Tom Hoge. If you were to replace Tom Hoge, who was at 7,100, with Russell Knox at 7,800, not only would you have had all golfers inside the top 10, you would have used up 49,600. So leaving 400 on the table, a little bit easier to swallow than, say, leaving $1,100 on the table. And this would have only been a 3-point difference between Hoge and Russell Knox. So could have gotten there, and you could have obviously taken down the $1 GPP winning lineup. But there were other iterations of this lineup that you could have done. But that was the optimal. That was the closest to normal lineup you could have, near the optimal lineup. I'm not going to really talk more about that. I do want to bring up the salary portion of it. Now, in my preview videos, I go over historical salaries. So if I go ahead and pull that tab up, we cover this summary box basically of looking at the average salary of the winner, average salary of golfers inside the top 10, what the minimum was, inside the top 10, that kind of thing. One of the most surprising things when I was doing the preview video was there were 16 golfers over the last 3 years. That doesn't include this year, but 16 over the last 3 years that were in the 7K range. It took up nearly 50% of all golfers inside the top 10 over the last 3 years. So obviously this range was one of the more important ranges to get to. Now, why does salary matter? Well, a lot of it has to go, with odds. It's, who we expect to do well at this golf course. I'm trying to think of how to word it. I don't really gamble with odds, but usually DraftKings scoring or DraftKings salary pricing is very similar to whatever the Vegas odds are on whatever website. It's very close. Obviously, your favorites are going to be in the 10K range. Well, the 7K range is going to be all your 100 to 200 to 1 golfers. Sometimes even 300 to 1. But it just goes by who is more prompt to win, I guess. Either way, 7 to 8K, 50% lives there or inside the top 10. And you could make, the analysis of, well, this is a tournament that's pretty volatile. Like anything can happen. I think when there's weather that's involved, usually Pebble Beach is always known for wind to pick up, that kind of stuff. It's not just a scoring fest. And it's also a Pro-Am, so it's really slow. Perhaps that's why we see a lot of 7 to 8K golfers. Also, we found out a lot of golfers withdraw from this tournament. A lot of them being favorites. Like this year, we had DJ withdraw from it. He was $12,000. That takes away 1 from the 10K range, which is kind of funny because everybody inside the 10K range finished inside the top 10. But either way, what I was getting at is 7K range, like this tournament is dominated by the 7K range. Does that align with this year? Well, we had 11 golfers inside the top 10 and 4 of them were in the 7K range. So I would say yes. I think this is actually the higher range. Yeah, we only have 3 in the 8K range, 1 in the 9K range, and 3 in the 10K range. So yeah, I would say this was dominated again by the 7K range. So unfortunately, the guys on Twitter at the 6K range, we didn't see anyone in the optimal lineup. But hey, one did show up in the $1 GPP winning lineup. And Akshay was one of our favorites. If you saw that in the strategy video, definitely talked him up there. Got a little love for the 6K range. Retweeting that saying Akshay and Bramlett, being in the optimal lineup when I ran the optimizer. It kind of worked out. So we kind of figured that out with Salaries. Unfortunately, I think I made sure I had one 6K golfer in all of my lineups, which was not a good thing to do. And another thing too, actually, this is a good time to get into this. I should bring it up during the bucket system, but one of the reasons I think we didn't see that many 6K golfers inside the top 10, or not that many, we didn't see any, or even really inside the top 20, is because I believe most of the 6K golfers usually live in this did not play section, every single year. And for this year, we had half of what we typically do in any other given year. This is where I feel like, this is where I feel like most of the 6K range. I don't know where I was going with that, but COVID, this is what we've seen every single review video that I do for all the other tournaments, for this year, just this calendar year. I've realized one of these buckets changes dramatically. And it might be the golfers who did not play, or it might be the golfers who missed the cut. You can obviously see the guys who missed the cut the year before jumped up nearly half, double of what it was. And this one dropped half. So this was a clear, switch between those two. My firm belief, and I think this is exactly what it is, COVID removed the Korn Ferry graduation, where you'd get 25 new golfers and maybe some other rookies from other avenues and how they could get here, temporary status and whatever. That was gone. So COVID obviously, again, removed the Korn Ferry graduation, and we didn't have a new influx of golfers. With that too, we kept some other golfers that just aren't good, and they probably lived in the 6K range this year. So I think that's why we didn't see that many in the 6K range. So that was kind of going a little long on that, but I just wanted to explain that because this also messed with the bucket system in a way. Trying to figure out, I think maybe I'll go into the buckets right now. Yeah, sure. Why not? Because we'll go left to right. That's fine. Now, I introduced this during the strategy video. I added a course history bucket and a recent form bucket. We already knew of the strokes gained bucket, the last year bucket, last week bucket. This is where it all started. Last week, we added strokes gained a little bit later. Well, actually earlier this year. And then we just introduced the course history and recent form buckets. But when it came to the last year bucket, we see absolutely no golfers in the last year one bucket inside the top 10. So this is your top 10 right here. I put the position over here. Usually I'd had it on the left side, but I think it's better to have it over here. But either way, inside the top 10, we see absolutely no last year ones. And I should have known this. I should have seen this. But when we're looking at, when we pull up the bucket system, and we look at golfers who were last year ones, those were golfers who did not play. You can see The total's 27. It ranks higher than this, by 4 golfers. But again, the buckets themselves had less golfers inside, or, for the did not plays, had less inside by half. And I think that's exactly why we didn't see any inside the top 10. So that messed with my thought process when it came to how many last year ones you wanted versus how many last year twos. Last year twos were golfers who top 20'd this tournament the year before. If I were to scroll over here and look at the last year, you can see that over here. Golfers who top 20. And then the golfers who were last year threes, those were golfers who missed the cut or withdrew. You can see Nate Lashley withdrew this tournament last year. Russell Knox missed the cut. And obviously Paul Casey fell in this, 64th place. So did Cameron Tringale. Usually we don't see last year's sixes inside the top 10. It's a very uncommon bucket to see inside the top 10, but, we had 2 that finished inside the top 10. I know Cameron Tringale was a favorite amongst a lot of golfers, and I know he was in the $1 GPP winning lineup, but obviously you could have transitioned to somebody else that scored more points. I think Jason Day just in itself scored more points, right? No, he didn't. He did not. I'll take that back. Either way, Tringale, not in the optimal lineup. Maverick McNeely, that would have been a good one to, transition to. Either way, having less golfers in that last year bucket one, I guess last year one bucket, there we go. That entailed less that we saw inside the top 10. I mean, Tom Lewis got really close. He was 14th place. Will Gordon, Cameron Percy. Cameron Percy was always near the top 10, and he just fell off over the last few holes. I don't know what it was, but it was close. Will Gordon also had a really bad Sunday. We could have seen 1 or 2 last year ones. Now, I'm not disappointed not seeing last year ones. There's an obvious reason why that is. Again, half of the bucket, the overall golfers in that bucket, there were half than there typically is. I got to remember to do that going forward. I think I do mention that in my strategy videos. I'm not 100% positive, but either way, I have to remember that going forward. There is going to be a bucket that has at least half, and it's probably always the did not play bucket. So even though it's ranked higher, when you take out, that many more possibilities to finish inside the top 10, I think that plays a huge factor in it. So I have to remember that. The same thing is going to apply for any of the other buckets too. If we were to look at last week, what was the big difference of the last week bucket? I think we just see a higher sprinkle of every other bucket and less did not plays. So I guess that makes sense, right? Nope, I lied. We have something wrong here. Yeah, we see less did not plays, big time. At least 20 less. So this bucket would have been your top bucket for the last week. And we do see more, we do see a good chunk of last week ones that finished inside the top 10. Maybe not as much as we probably typically would see, but again, the bucket is smaller. So I think just having the quantity of people increase the odds of that bucket showing inside the top 10. It's usually kind of a bad bucket, right? The did not plays they consist of a lot of random golfers. And most of them probably not good, honestly. So that's one of the odd things. I didn't really see that in the course history bucket or the recent form bucket. It does appear we have less did not plays, for golfers who did not have course history, that is. So I should actually put that here. No course history, not did not play. And really it's tournament history again. Forgot about that. Trying to see the difference of golfers who, I guess the recent form isn't going to be all that different, even with, I mean, that's all determinant based off of, golfers and their commitments to certain tournaments and whatnot. So I'm not going to look at that. That's not a big deal to me. I guess the only thing I do see the difference in is the golfers with no course history. That bucket drops at least half as well. So yeah, I don't need to go further into that, but it did play a big factor on all of these. And it's whatever bucket goes down is probably the bucket we have to pay less attention to or curb our expectations to. So that's kind of, I guess, a wrap on the bucket system. I don't really need to talk more about it other than I think with all the buckets we have now, I might create a ranking system based off of it. I averaged all of them out over in this column here, and then I ranked them in this column, based off of whatever their average was. One of the great things that I saw was minus Tom Hoge and Nate Lashley, everybody else inside the top 10 was inside the top 50 for rank when it comes to looking at all the buckets together. Now, why is that significant? Well, there are 157 golfers here. So the top 1/3 with the buckets shows up inside the top 10. That's pretty good. I don't know of another system or anything like that predicts, not so much predicts, but I don't even want to say that this is extremely successful, but I don't know if there's ever going to be anything in golf that's going to pinpoint, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 10th place perfectly. But to see something like this, that cuts out 2/3 of your field. If we can just look at this type of rank here, that's awesome. The other thing that did really well is the SweetSpot score. When I actually look at the SweetSpot score altogether, if we're looking at everybody inside the top 10, my highest rank was 55. Again, I'm cutting out 1/3 of the golfers. And that even includes those that had a high, I guess Tom Hoge wasn't inside the top 10, but that includes one of the higher ranks when it comes to all the buckets. So SweetSpot score, if you remember what I discussed, I know this is kind of messy. Let me see what I can hide to try to remove some of this. Let's go ahead and hide just the rest of these buckets. When we scroll over and look at my scoring, like I have it here, I looked at the bucket combinations. So obviously I include a score based off of what their last year and last week buckets are. Because I do track the success of those bucket combinations. I also look at the official World Golf ranking. Now, I only look at the top 300. I basically transform that number into, the higher the rank or the higher the rating. Yeah, the higher the rank. Closer to 100 it is. So like DJ would have like 99.99 because he's number 1 in the world. So it's basically flipping it upside down, dividing by 3, and then that ends up being the score. I don't know if you followed that, but you can find that in the strategy video. I also looked at POA average and top 10% POA and course history. All of those three things with recent form, DK average, and scoring average. Again, I'm basically trying to, I can't think of a different word than transform those stats. The better golfers are going to be closer to 100 points, and then the worst, it's going to be closer to 0, basically. So I want to benefit those that are doing well. I mean, scoring average ends up being pretty tight when you kind of do that calculation. DK average, I actually don't even do any calculation to get that to 100. It's just based off of what the DK average is season long. And then recent form, I tried doing a calculation based off of what their average finishing position has been over the last 7 weeks and then put that into a score. Either way, that ends up becoming the SweetSpot score. And it ended up being really good. I see no one here that was in the 100s. Usually we do. So I'm like, I need to figure out how to do that a little bit better. So yeah, all of that looked good. I do want to try to incorporate this rank somehow. Obviously, you can see my number 1 SweetSpot guy was the number 2 ranked golfer. My number 3 SweetSpot guy was, based off of buckets, he would be the 8th ranked golfer. Now let me go ahead and put a filter on this. Not a filter, but yeah, filter. And then rank them this way. So you can see there's some miscuts up here. You know, I have 5, and this is your top 20, top 19. So let's see, I have 6. I have 7 inside my top 20, which isn't very good compared to like 4 inside the top 10 or top 20. Again, not very good. But when we look at like SweetSpot Score, you know, Sloan 100, yeah, this is the thing. I need to look at this a little bit closer to try to figure out how this rank I can incorporate with the score. If I were to go ahead and look at everybody top score, there's a lot of golfers inside the top 20. A lot of golfers inside the top 13. So that's really good. And not that many golfers that really missed the cut. So I think there's got to be kind of a mix between the two. I have to figure it out somehow. I mean, I really don't have to, but I want to. You know, I want to try to figure out, I want to crack a code, you know, crack some kind of code to, I don't know, going forward, trying to win a GPP, that kind of thing. So those are things I'm kind of toying around with, trying to figure out, you know, can I do anything with the average score? Again, looking at everything, strokes gained bucket, course history, recent form, last week buckets, you know, what they all are, and then trying to figure it out from there. Obviously, you know, Nate Lashley finished 5th. His rank wouldn't have been good because he was a 6 for course history, a 3rd recent form, a 3rd last year, a 3rd last week. Now, the one thing I do want to point out is if I look at every one of these columns, I only see 1 6. I'm looking at 6 and 5s. So there's a 5 here, a 6 there. That's great. When I look at recent form, there's a 5 there. That's it. When I'm looking at last year, I have 2 6s, and that's it. And when I'm looking at last week, I see nothing larger than a 4. That is how I base my criteria when I use the optimizer. Is like I'm saying I don't want more than 1 6. And I guess if we were to look at everyone who was a last year 6, how many does that even entail? Quite a bit. 41 golfers. So if I only want 1 out of this, you know, it's good to have some kind of optimizer look at that and say, okay, just only choose 1. Because obviously we only see 1 inside the top 10. Now, Hoagie, Cameron Davis, Brian Stewart, very close as well. And they were all up there when it came to like last day. I think Stewart at one time was 13th place, I think, maybe 11th. Obviously fell to 16th, but either way, you know, when it comes to these buckets, I don't want to see 6s or 5s in any of them because they are your lowest ranked buckets. You know, looking at recent form, last year 6s, look at that. If you can just cut out any of these golfers, how awesome is that? You know, I don't want any last year 6. Boom. 40 some golfers out of there. I only want 1 last year or 1 course history of 6. That's going to cut out a ton of them, right? I mean, we already talked about it, so I'm not going to. Well, how about last year 6s? How many last year 6s were there? Not many. And in fact, 2 of them finished inside the top 10. So the percentage there looks a lot better than what I'm actually, you know, pointing out. Last year 5s, you know, the majority of them missed the cut. I think the last year 3s were your biggest bucket. You saw a bunch of them, but you have to choose between that and, 65 of them. I guess if we were to remove, you know, any of the 6s here, I mean, this is where it gets a little dangerous because if I'm like, you know, you want to remove your 6s. If I were to do that, we're going to remove Nate Lashley, who was in the optimal lineup. So you really can't. But if I said you can only pick 1 last year 3 that was a course history bucket of 6, you'd have saved yourself, you know, some hassle. Like, you also wouldn't have picked another course history 6. And I guess if I was to do that, if we just look at all of the 6s for course history, actually open this up to all the buckets. You know, who was our top price guy? Zalatoris, Cam Davis, Ryan Harmon, Malnati, Sabatini. For the most part, all of you guys here at the top salaries, not very good. Maybe if we're making bullet, plays, all this should aim to do is limit your exposure to all of these golfers. So I like that. Like that to me, it makes creating lineups a little easier, in my opinion. And I'm never going to put more than 2 6s. So could you yourself see, before this tournament began, when you're creating players, did you like 2 to 3 to 4 of these guys? You wouldn't have wanted to put them all in a lineup. And that's kind of what the bucket system's trying to help you to realize. Don't put 2 or 3 of these guys together. You could have put 2, but the only way you're going to do that like successfully is putting Nate Lashley and Tom Hoagie together. And without an optimizer, does the eye test even, pass? When you're looking at the spreadsheet and you're like, oh gosh, Hoagie's not even that good. I don't want to pair him up with anybody. Maybe I'll play him in a couple lineups, but you might not even get on a Nate Lashley, Tom Hoagie thing. Like their ranks, just based off of those buckets, not very good. SweetSpot Score, sure, looks pretty good. But either way, it's just to limit you from playing those guys. And really, if you're looking at the high price guys, maybe it's a way to just remove yourself from trying to play any of them. I don't know how many of this would have saved, any of you guys out there, but perhaps, you wouldn't have gone so hard on Will Zalatoris. I mean, that is a possibility. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of all I want to get at with the bucket system is usually it helps me steer away from bad plays. And it helps me get on better plays. I'm going to say the best plays, but for the most part, good plays. Again, looking outside the top 10, just inside the top 5, let's say top 4. Let's just use this to my advantage here. I see nothing larger than a 4. When you're trying to figure out, like Maverick McNeely would have been a really good play. Just by looking at all of his buckets. Paul Casey, not terrible. We have 2 1s and then a 4 and a 6. Like not great, but it's not terrible either. Maybe that's why he did well. His rank wasn't that bad, and he was a second ranked SweetSpot Score guy. So, putting those things together might be, more advantageous. I have to figure out a way how to do this. Try to put the rank or maybe their score together with this divided by 2. I don't know. We'll try to figure it out. Just to see how the plays would be. And maybe that wouldn't even work either. I don't know. I'll still try to figure it out. But either way, the bucket system, again, it's trying to narrow down player pools. And that's the whole main purpose for me. Okay, let's go ahead and get into all the other good stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and just hide all of this. We don't need to see it anymore. We'll keep it like this. And basically what I want to do is first talk about tee time pairings. I always like to talk about, what starting course matters. I know a lot of people in the industry do. It looks like a pretty even mix between Spyglass Hill and Pebble. Maybe 1 or 2 more Pebble. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so it's 7 Pebble versus 4 Spyglass Hill. So yeah, definitely probably, at least for this tournament, it was favoring those that played Pebble on Thursday, Spyglass on Friday. And again, the better weather day was Thursday. So that makes a lot of sense. Do we see any guys paired together? Usually it's based off of the colors. I don't see anybody that's paired together on there. We're looking for like another 42. I don't see another 42. So no one was really paired together. But the reason that all of these colors are highlighted has everything to do, I don't know if you guys can see the box, but dark green means the scoring average and DK average, like whatever their average were for these golfers. Dark green means that's better than field average. Light green means it's better than the DK field average. And yellow means it's better than the scoring average, the field average. So all of these guys were better field average except for Tom Lewis in at least one of those stats, either DK points or scoring average. So seeing all of these guys, I guess in color is good. Now, one way I can show you what that looks like, if I just grab everyone who is non-colored and look at all of the golfers, let's see, what does that make up? 65. So we could cut out 65 golfers by looking at field average. That doesn't work every single year, but obviously for this tournament, and it might be something I look at in the future, because I have seen most of the leaderboard is always colored in one way or another. So definitely something I think I'm going to really look into going forward, trying to find all the better scoring average guys. And really, again, it's to limit. And then obviously you go from there, peel those layers off, look at the bucket system, peel those layers off, and maybe we get our best plays that way. Nate Lashley shows up that way. He was obviously one of those higher ranked guys. And then I think Tom Hoagie shows up that way. He's better scoring average and DK average. So regardless of the buckets, this shows up pretty good. So definitely something I want to consider going forward. The reason that these are colored, they're all the best showdown plays. So I'm starting to track that. But I'm going to leave. I'm not going to talk more about that. We looked at, the demographics, golfer demographics, trying to find all the golfers that, lived in California, either in college or perhaps they're currently living there. Not a lot of people showed up. Max Homa, obviously, so maybe that's a good reason to play Max. Maverick McNeely, Patrick Cantlay as well. Cantlay said he loves playing California golf, so, put that with his college roots. It makes sense, but I don't really see that much, like that importance. Now, the top 10, top 20, littered with golfers inside the top 300 in this field. So if we clear everybody out and just put in the blanks, how many golfers is that? 72. 72 golfers who are not ranked inside the so outside the 300. None of them finished top 10. So, I don't know. What do we do? Let's see. Let's do this already. I want to just see what it looks like. Let's get rid of all the blanks. That leaves us with how many golfers? So we get rid of all of the blanks. We have 83 golfers to choose from. Okay. How about those that are not highlighted here? Do we have anybody? We filter by color because that's how I have it. So get rid of all. Okay, these are the whites. So we're going to get rid of 16 more golfers. So filter by color. How do we change that to not be by color? I don't think I can. I don't think I can select multiple colors. I can't. It's a bummer. So so somewhere in the future, I'm going to have to put a value next to this, but we could get rid of 16 more golfers by just looking at that. And again, 16 we originally had, sorry. So if we're looking at every golfer in this within this bucket already, 83 minus 16, now we're on 67 golfers to choose from. I guess going from there, probably look at the buckets most likely. Now, I wouldn't want to get rid of all sixes, but you could see where I'm trying to get to, right? Let's remove these sixes. I don't know. How many did we just get rid of? Just 2. Get rid of all the sixes. There aren't any, but let's get rid of the 5s. Actually, let me get rid of the 5s here too. I don't want to see 5s. Down to 67, and obviously minus 16 from there. We're down to 50 golfers, so that's not terrible. Maybe it's something I try in the future. I don't know. But a lot of these filters already being put on, we can obviously see somewhere between 50 and 60 golfers, basically. Within our player pool. So let me open this back up. And let's get into course history. Now, what I'm going to do is just look at, top, bottom, top on down. You can see what the finishing position is right here. It looked like course history mattered quite a bit. You have 7 golfers right here 7 golfers inside the top 10 of course history, finishing inside the top 20. So again, these are your top course history guys. I'm scrolling all the way down. Here's number 10. This is first. Daniel Berger has the best course history. He just won, so he's just going to get better at this tournament. All the way down to Patrick Cantlay, who had the 10th best course history. If you look at everyone in here, we have 7 golfers who finished top 20, 2 golfers who missed the cut, and 1 guy who finished 63rd. So course history, definitely a huge factor at this tournament. Even if we scroll down to the top 20, we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 missed cuts inside the top 20. So you could have created a lineup based off of course history, and it would have done well. I actually highlighted this in the strategy video. The winning lineup last year, or I think it was either last year or the year before, used nothing but course history guys. Actually had a missed cut with Scott Stallings and won the GPP. And it was all the guys that were inside the top. I want to see if I can figure it out. Top course history. So if we look at, again, it's tournament history. I should mention it that way. I guess we have to look at the optimal lineups. So it wasn't here. It must have been 2019. Okay, so wasn't 2019? Was it 2020? No, was it 2018? I know I saw this. I know for a fact this was here. Oh my goodness. It's gotta be 2020 that this happened, right? Okay, thank God. What happened? Why did it do that? I thought I saw Scott Stallings up here. Oh, I think I said the optimal lineup. I'm kind of screwing up myself. So the $1 GP or the $5 GPP winning lineup had Scott Stallings, who missed the cut. And most of his plays, or most of the guy who won this tournament, most of his plays were golfers who had good course history. But now that I see this, I'm mixing it up. Have to be. Yeah. Was it 2019? 2019 had all the okay. I'm mixing 2 tournaments up. My apologies. So 2019, the guy that won the $5 GPP winning lineup, he used every golfer who had good course history. And that did not include a missed cut. That was 2020. Guy missed cut. Obviously, Scott Stallings had the best tournament history, so my bad. Mixed up the 2. Obviously, I remembered incorrectly. But either way, course history for this tournament played a huge factor. Looking at, I added a new stat, and I'm going to do this going forward at cuts made, whatever the percentage at this tournament was. We see a couple that are under the 50% mark, but for the most part, everyone over 50%. So cuts made might be something to look at going forward. Let's sort by cuts made. So obviously we still see a bunch of missed cuts, but if you can tell, other than Phil and Alex Noren, everyone else pretty low priced. Outside of Phil and Noren, 7,200 was the highest price. Then obviously going down to 87 as we scroll down. I wonder what it looks like from 0 up. Nobody inside the top 10? Is that correct? So nobody with a 0% cut made percentage inside the top 10. The lowest was 20%, and then it goes to 33. So I mean, who knows? We could put filters in all of this, and maybe that's how we can remove everybody else until we get to a group of like 40 golfers, basically. I mean, it's possible. Overall POA average, the field average is 60.779. I have it filtered now by top top to bottom. POA played a huge factor as well. We only see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 missed cuts inside the top 20 of POA average. You see 4, 6, 7, 8 inside the top 20. So way more golfers inside the top 20 for the tournament that were top 20 overall POA. And one of the things I always like to look at too is overall POA percentage. Now, if we're only looking at top 10 golfers, my rule is always play over 7% whenever the number is 7%. And I feel like I do this every single week where it's like, okay, it's not 7%. It's actually 6% or it's 5%. Either way, it's not a super low percentage, but it's somewhere between 6, or I should say somewhere between 5 and 7 is the bare minimum. And as you can see, this is your top 10 POA percentage, so it's the percentage of these golfers on POA tracks finishing inside the top 10. And you can see how many events that they have right here in this column, so you can see which ones play a lot. Obviously, Jordan Spieth with 57. The reason it's shaded green, this dark of a green means he is at the top of golf, events played on POA. Obviously, a really good average, a really good percentage. He likes POA. Same goes with Paul Casey. Both of those guys do. Jason Day as well. And the rest of them, pretty high numbers. Now, you can also see Tom Lewis only has 7 events on POA with 0%. This is still going to stay at 0%, but it was really close. And I only look at top 10 percentage. So the top 10 still remains, 6% and better. So we can move on. That was kind of your course history. We can look at recent form now. I don't really care to look too much at last week's scoring stats, but I do have them up. You can see it's just a flux, like different DK points, different last week finishes. Scoring average kind of similar, but obviously a lot of guys miss the cut, so you really can't use that all that well, and it's hard to use stats when we're looking at the top 20 here. You're going to see a fluctuation of everything. Looking at recent form stats, it's probably a better thing to look here just to see, the last 7 weeks of tournaments, which golfers are trending up and which aren't. Green, the color green is good. So obviously those that are, that have green colored stats are better within this field because it's based off of a scale. Dark red's bad, green is good, yellow's middle. So the colors will fluctuate towards those two ends, with yellow being the middle ground. Either way, green is good. So you can see actually, for the most part, all of the strokes gained stats for the top 20 golfers were good. Sure, we see some negatives in here, but it's not as bad as some. I mean, maybe I should look at my stats a little bit better, because if I get rid of 9 points, -9 right here, yeah, the color scale is going to be different. So I'm going to have to do that going forward. I look at a different spreadsheet, copy it from there, put it here. My spreadsheet, by the way, but I'm going to look at that better. Look at, the worst. John Senden is really changing the color schemes of this, because we do see a lot of negatives in here. So I do want to be transparent with that. Now, strokes gained, just overall season long, I'm going to discuss that a little bit differently here. I'm going to actually discuss it in the strokes gained bucket portion of this. Recent form versus baseline. So this is season long versus the last 7 weeks. Green is good, obviously. Red, not good. And you can see what the stats are right here. If we're looking at strokes gained total, how many are over 0, like better than their baseline over the recent weeks? Kind of mixed in between, almost half to half. You see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 6, or I should say 5 golfers who have worse stats recently than their baseline, 6 golfers who have better stats. That's strokes gained total. Strokes gained tee to green. Okay, a little different story here. We only see 3 that are worse, the rest of them better. How about off the tee? Pretty much in the middle once again. Approach stats, well, your top 3 golfers were worse recently than their baseline. Everyone else better. Around the green, yeah, not as good. You know, they're far more negative, so people doing worse recently, but there is a reason to that. And it's primarily because it depends on how many opportunities they're chipping or how many opportunities they have at this stat. Because the less you have, the more it's going to sway these results. So if one guy, if a golfer, say has 5 chips in a round, you know, on average has 5. If he's around 0, like most of these guys are, if he's around 0, maybe, you know, 4 of those chips were within 3 feet and that last chip was outside 5 or 6 feet. Altogether, that's going to make him negative because that one that's 5 to 6 feet away is really going to pull down his numbers. It's very touchy like that. And that's that one thing I think most people don't understand is like around the green stats, not as important because there aren't as many opportunities around the green than there are, say, approach. Approach, you're going to have probably 18 approach shots. You only might have 5 around the green, you know, shots. And when it comes to putting, you're probably going to have somewhere between, within a round, you're probably going to have somewhere between, I'm going to say like 22 to 36. Because, you know, you have to consider 1 putts and 2 putts, that kind of thing. It's going to be somewhere around there. So you can see this stat here going to have way more. So these numbers probably going to be a little bit more rounded, I suppose. When it comes to approach, yeah, you're going to have 18 there as well. And off the tee, you're going to have 14. You'll have 14 shots off the tee. So it really does matter how many shots are going into this. That's why a lot of people don't really look at around the green. That's why if any of these are like really skewed, it's primarily because, you know, you have less around the green shots. Approach. Now, Jordan Spieth just holed out, you know, twice during this last tournament. He gained 2 strokes just by holing out. Plus whatever it ended up being from how far away he was. You know, those shots are more luck. Yeah, he's good and he's going to put the ball close, but just putting the ball in the hole adds -1 altogether. And that makes sense, right? Because he's obviously holing it. But either way, that's 2 full strokes on approach that he's gaining just for holing out. He doesn't do that all the time. And those stats a little bit are kind of skewed. And you know my take on this, you know, altogether. But either way, hard to look at these stats and see, okay, what is your take on it? Does it come back to the mean? Do you look at these as trends like, oh, well, you know, they're always going to get better? That's not the case. You know, like these guys were already doing well and they're already inside the top 10. Around the, you know, off the tee, like we already have a bunch of guys that are performing better than their baseline. I mean, it's kind of a mix. It doesn't fluctuate much. Everything is like 0.0 something, or not 0.0, but like, I guess 0.3 both directions is the highest. Otherwise, everyone is 0.0 to 0.01 or 0.1, I should say. You know, upper. So off the tee, not terrible. Now, if I were to go ahead and sort this by golfers who are doing the best, sure, these guys kind of came back down to the mean a little bit. But you do have your best, you know, the golfer who won the tournament in here as well. And if we flip it the other way, yeah, I mean, sure, we see not the greatest results. So I don't know really how to look at this. I honestly, I don't really look at it. Instead, what I do is I look at the strokes gained buckets. And I track these like all my other buckets. I give them values. So everything positive is your number 1 bucket for strokes gained. Positive off the tee plus positive putting includes golfers in this bucket because there is no other way to really do this. This is bucket 2. Bucket 3 would be golfers who have positive off the tee, negative putting. Bucket 4 would be negative off the tee plus positive putting. Bucket 5, negative off the tee plus negative putting. And bucket 6 are no strokes gained. So, I mean, they don't have enough tournaments to actually have strokes gained. And as I do every single week, is I say look from left to right. How many finish inside the top 20? So right away, positive off the tee plus positive putting, we have a total of 6 golfers. Positive off the tee, negative putting, we have a total of 5. So there's 11 golfers right there inside the top 20 in those 2 buckets. So those are always kind of the majority. And then we look at bucket 3, we only have 3. Jordan Spieth leads it. Bucket 4 this week was much different. We actually have 6 golfers. So that ties bucket 2 with the most golfers inside the top 20. Usually this step ladders, or however you want to call it, where you'd only see 3 here, you might see 4 here or 5, you might see 5 or 6 over here. It'll create a step ladder all the way going from right to left. Well, this week, a little different. Negative off the tee plus negative putters did a little better. You could make the argument that this has to do more with the golf course being shorter, being a little easier, or maybe weather being involved. Maybe that's the case where, usually negative off the tee golfers are your shorter hitters. Now, negative putting, maybe that's someone regressing back to the mean who'd been putting terribly recently, but ended up doing well. That could be it too. Bucket 6, golfers who don't have stats, nobody shows up inside the top 10, top 20. Either way, though, I always use this pick 0 to 2. Now, those 2 golfers were in your optimal lineup. I don't believe Max Homa was. Max Homa was not in the optimal lineup, but he was in the $1 GPP winning lineup. I say pick 0 to 2 here. Jordan Spieth, I don't think he was in the optimal lineup either. Yeah, Jordan Spieth was in the optimal lineup. So again, how we're doing this, I'm sorry, going all over the place. So 1, 2, perfect. 0 to 2, I said. Pick 0 to 1, Jordan Spieth, he's in the optimal lineup. 1 to 3, did we actually have anybody in the optimal lineup? I don't think so. I mean, I said you could have changed Russell Knox with somebody at 7,100. Who was it? Nate Lashley. No. It couldn't have been him. It probably wasn't it? Oh, Tom Hoagie was in the optimal lineup. Okay. Man, I can't remember where all my tabs are. But either way. So Tom Hoagie was in the optimal lineup. So right away, we have 4 golfers. Nobody here, but I said you could switch Tom Hoagie out for Russell Knox. I'm going to do it because obviously it's easier to get there. So I said pick 1 to 3, 0 to 2, 0 to 2. So far, everything's working out. Daniel Berger was in the optimal lineup, and so was Charlie Hoffman. So those were all of your golfers, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 7. So I guess we just get rid of him, right? So Lashley, Spieth, Hoffman, Hoagie, Berger, McNeely. So Berger, Hoffman, need those guys. It's just Russell Knox. I thought I selected 2. So there's 3 there, 4, 5, 6. So the strokes gained bucket worked out. Again, 2 to 4. We picked 2 to 4. Couldn't really put anyone else in there, to fit any of the salary ranges. Sure, maybe we could put Jason Day instead of Jordan Spieth. But that's just kind of getting cute. Like, it's not that big of a deal that only 2 showed up in this bucket instead of 4 or 3 or whatever. The minimum was 2. That's what we wanted to go with. Obviously, you could select other golfers here. Akshay was here. He was in the $1 GPP winning lineup. So obviously, it could have been done that way. But I don't think there's anything else that I need to cover. Oh, the optimizer. I'm working on this new optimizer. Now it's very similar to what you've already seen, but it's now incorporating all of these. I now have kind of a drop down of who I want to lock, who I want to create as a core. I can set my max ownership. So like my sweet spot defaults, basically, if I were to click that, it's going to go through and basically select all of my defaults, what I find as normal defaults. Obviously, this week I had 2 last year ones as my minimum. That obviously screwed me up. And I need to look at that kind of thing. But, just for the sake of everything, I should actually create drop downs for these as well. But just for the sake of everything, if I were to put that to 0, keep this at 2, I want to keep everything like this. If I run my optimizer and put Patrick Cantlay as my core, I don't know if I should or if I shouldn't. Doesn't give me a terrible lineup. Harry Higgs obviously missed the cut. Furyk did well. I think Jones was doing well. Streelman was doing well. So yeah, I mean, like, it works out, but I want to get rid of this. Let me try it again. Run the optimizer. It might just give me the same thing. So yeah, pretty much. I think I can't remember if Scott was the 6th one or not, but either way, it's pretty awesome. Like, it will tell me what it chose. So obviously I see 5 last year 2s were picked, 1 last year 3. How many last week numbers? Obviously there's 2 here. Maybe I don't like that. I select 1. It looks at the course history, buckets. You can see what my maxes are over on this side. I can reset these as well. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I did think I had set this as 1, but I guess not. That's good. But if I were to run it again now, changing that last week bucket, let's see what it comes up with. Cantlay, Casey, Furyk, Higgs missed the cut, Sink missed the cut, and Ben Martin missed the cut. So that didn't work out. Maybe if I put 3 as my minimum for 7K golfers. No, that's not going to change because I already picked 3. Sticks with the same guys. Well, guess what? I don't want Casey in my lineup. So obviously it likes Sink for his price. I would have to go in and change that. Let's say I don't want Sink. I'm not going to bore you with going through this as many times as I possibly could. But we kind of already covered everything with the buckets. What I've learned with this optimizer is I need to set who my core golfers are. Because I can change my max ownership. And when I create my lineups, it looks at whatever my own. So if I go ahead and save this lineup, now it puts 100%. If I were to run this again, it's not going to select the same golfers, which is awesome. That's exactly what I want it to do. And if I were to go ahead and lock somebody, it's going to go ahead and just, I think it's going to. Let me double check. I think I need to add them as my core. It might break the system. We'll see. No, it doesn't. Okay, so it skips it. So yeah, whatever I have as my lock, Cantlay will just continue showing up. So I need to create my core, determine it based off of that, and then set my ownership so I don't see the same guys over and over again. For whatever reason, I had all of these ownership levels just they were so weird. I say weird, like I had these 3 guys at 40%, except for Paul. Never mind. I think I had Zalatoris, Berger, and Cantlay at 40% for whatever reason, because they were kind of my core golfers. And then I put like Casey at 6%, and then Jordan Spieth I had at 10%. But then my 6K and below golfers, I had everybody at 5%. I didn't even consider how many are actually in the 6K range. So if I do that, you have 95 golfers in the 6K range. 95. Well, if you do the math, 95, times 5%, I'm only creating, like, I create a max of 100 lineups. I'm never going to fill that 5% whatsoever. And even some of my favorite plays in here, because I am also going through here and going, I'm not playing Ricky Barnes. I'm not playing any of these guys. All of these guys are no's for me. You know, I'm not playing any of them. So their ownership altogether is 18%. That just removes all those guys. That also narrows down this. But also, you know, I like Akshay. So I'm going to switch him to 10%. You know, now I have Akshay a bunch of times. And if I hit Run Optimizer and then save my lineup, one of the things I like about Optimizer is I can stay down at that page, run it, and then boom, it comes right back up. Sure, let's save this lineup. Let's run another Optimizer lineup. I want to see Akshay Bhatia show up at least once, you know, in the next 4 or 5. Doesn't. Herman shows up. Taylor, Kazire. You know, it's not going to pick Paul Casey this time because obviously 33 is over its 20%. You know, now we get to a lineup like this. Everyone made the cut. You know, that's a fantastic lineup. Cantlay and Berger, boom. First and third. Bramlett didn't do great on the weekend. Stewart was up there. Even Burgoon did well. Like, here's another good lineup minus Malnati, but if I save, I'm probably not going to see Malnati again. Neesmith, Tringali. Unfortunately, I'm going to miss out on a Tringali lineup, I think, going forward. But boom. Berger, Knox. I don't think Grace did that well. But you can see how this goes. And I get to change the ownership as I see fit. So if I don't like Brian Gay, I can go ahead and get him out of there. If I don't like Brandon Grace, I can go ahead and get him out of there. And it's just going to keep bringing me to the best lineup based off of whatever I have as my metric. And right now, this is just based off the SweetSpot score. I mean, the SweetSpot score didn't do terrible. It's just finding the right lineups. And I guess if I were to go ahead and put down, you know, a minimum of 1, maybe I get to Akshay finally. Like, that's what I'm trying to get to is Akshay. And you can see Patrick Cantlay is always staying at the top. Still not getting there. Do I already have an Akshay lineup, I wonder? And I didn't even see it. So Akshay doesn't meet certain criterias. That's what's being broken. What is Akshay? 1, 4, 5, 1. So recent form bucket 5. Is that also? So 2 is my max? Oh, no. 2 is my max. It's not going to break now. Like, Akshay should show up. I just don't know what was going on before. What did I have? Oh, I had 3 7Ks. That's why. So I wasn't going to get to Akshay because I think the optimizer couldn't find something to go with ownership. Something like that. I don't know. I would have to look into it. But either way, all 3 of these guys made the cut. Phil didn't, obviously, but yeah. Anyways, the whole purpose I'm bringing this up is this is going to be available for you guys some point. This is going to be something that I'm either going to give away as a giveaway or I'm going to allow you guys to purchase it. And it's just going to be for a tournament. There's obviously some tabs down here that I need to fill out and try to figure out, but this is what I'm working on for you guys. So if you want to use, you know, the SweetSpot method, the optimizer is going to give it to you. And it's, again, you can save lineups. This is good because it's basically, if you're familiar with importing lineups, that's exactly what this is doing. And I know you probably can't see it that well, but you would just copy this to whatever the CSV file that you're getting out. You'd put this next to your lineups, and that's all it is. Then you just import it. It obviously tells you how much salary is remaining. I mean, you can see that also with the optimizer down here, how much salary is being used, that kind of thing. So I'm excited. I've been working on this one pretty hard. I probably should have put more time into creating a database, but in time, I actually have a helper helping me with that. So I'll get there eventually. But yeah, looking forward to this. Hopefully you guys are finding this exciting. And I'm going to end it there. So thank you guys for watching. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll see you in the next one. All right, bye.